away from who you were. Flashing that smile and the whole world's a blur. Dancing in the limelight, oh you're on in the night. Looking fresh, looking tight, honey.
I got to admit, I really like that song, and nobody. It's like, who are those people? Velvet Haze. It's from, it's from Artlist, from a subscription service that I use for all the music that we use here at Rockbox, and I love it. I think it's they got great music. Anyway, powerfully positive, back again with my wonderful co-host Stacey Steinmiller.
Hello.
Hi, Stacey.
Good
You're
to be
looking very powerful over the water, over the raging seas. That's what you represent to me, the raging seas, the oceans.
here. Uh-oh.
And-
Do I take people under and drown them?
Drown them. I can't breathe when I'm around you. You actually dropped a bomb on me this morning when I was saying, I'm a water sign. And you're like, no, Aquarians are an air sign. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, yeah. So are Pisces, are they the only water sign, and Cancer, right? Because they're a crab.
Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio.
Scorpio. Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Which is weird. They tend to they get mistaken for a fire sign because of who they are.
Well, I think Scorpions would be in the water.
Yeah,
or is a Scorpio not really a scorpion?
Yeah, it's just the elements and they go in order. So it starts at Aries and it's fire, earth, air, water. Fire, earth, air, water.
It's a completely different episode for a different day.
Yeah.
Breaking down the signs with Stacey Steinmiller. Today we're going to talk about resistance, which you brought up to me, and it's inadvertently, it's not my favorite topic, but it's a topic that I have a lot of experience with. Just resistance in general, and I bet you a lot of people have that experience with resistance, maybe without knowing that it is in fact resistance.
Right.
Which
exactly.
is resistance is a very wily thing that sneaks up on you and takes the form of different things, and you're like, oh, that's resistance. Now, I was listening to an audiobook, and I can't remember who it's a very popular motivational speaker, thought leader person, and the name escapes me, but he has this whole thing about resistance that I found really, really interesting, that kind of hit the nail on the head for me. Why don't you tell me what your definition of resistance is?
I guess I think of it as like usually a holding on is what came to me at first, which I know you might think more of like pushing away, but I think we experience more resistance when we're holding on. That's when we're trying to force something in one way or another, forcing to do or forcing not to do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. So, yeah, that does make sense. Forcing. So, do you mean kind of like when you focus on something that you don't want to happen, you inadvertently are bringing it toward yourself, like you're.
Well, there's that. But when we are focusing on what we don't want, there's also this like a tightened, resisting energy, and our brain is focused somewhere, and so our actions are focused somewhere, and we're just not open. We're not relaxed. So the opposite of resistance would be like openness, right? So when I think of resistance, I think of like my shoulders crouched, tense, like think of like in a ball. which yes, it could also be bracing and pushing like this, but there's like that tight energy where the opposite would be an openness, receiving possibility. So you're in like that sort of energy instead when you're not in resistance.
I was scrolling through my audiobooks to try to find the one that I was referring to, and I just realized I have a shit ton of audiobooks.
Sure you do.
A lot of audiobooks, like way too many. Audible is they love me there. Um,
I bet.
so the one thing that um we wanted to talk about was what you brought up, which was like um resisting the negative influences around us and resisting that. So in one way that would be like kind of like a positive form of resistance, I guess. Or is it even considered resistance if you're resisting negativity? Because usually resistance is sort of a has a negative connotation. Like resistance means you're resisting that forward motion, you're resisting good things from happening. But if you're resisting something negative, help me do the math on that.
Yeah, and well, so I would actually go deeper with that because I wouldn't recommend being in a state of resistance even towards negativity. And
Okay.
that's not to encourage negativity, it's more about just being honest with your actual experience. So if you're in a quote negative mood, or having negative thoughts, you don't want to necessarily resist them. That's where like mindfulness and meditation and so forth come in, right? Like when you have a negative thought, a judgment, a feeling, you're taught in meditation, right, to just watch it float. Maybe I should have done the clouds today to watch it float
You
by
wanted to.
like a
I said do the
passing
water.
clouds. I didn't know I'd have a cloud analogy come up though.
So
So
wait,
maybe we'll have a
so
water
so
one.
but this is specifically if you're meditating, right? So if you're going throughout your day and there's a lot of negativity around you, you maybe can't just meditate, right?
Well, so the point of meditation is to train your mind on how to act off the mat, right?
Oh, okay,
So there's
okay.
on and off the mat. So ideally, it's just a training ground. Like you go to the gym to lift weights, it should transfer to being able to carry your groceries to your car, you
I see.
know? So it's like the same idea. So if there's negative stuff around you, you want to do that same thing where you let it pass by. You don't resist it, but you don't absorb it and eat it up and digest it either. You let it pass by and you just
Hmm.
notice it and you're like, oh, look at all that negative energy just hanging around over here. Doopy doopy
Wow.
doo.
That
Like that.
that's that's some pretty intense discipline right there.
Yes. Yes.
That's that takes a lot.
Yeah.
Actually to recognize it and then to say I'm not going to let that influence my day. I'm not going to let that do anything to me. I'm just going to bye-bye. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
That's a challenge. That's a challenge. I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I've tried. I think I may have been able to do that from time to time depending on generally what it is that's happening and the situation I'm in, but depending on how intense that negativity could be just to watch it go by. But I guess that's what, what you said when you get into regularly meditating and training your mind to be able to overcome those things, you have to you try to strive to that point by working at it.
Right. Yeah. And that's where the real work is. And it is really hard. It does take a lot of work and a lot of discipline, but that's the work. And the cool thing, well, I call it cool, which sounds, weird, but so when you are when you are quote triggered by that event, say like the negativity or so forth. So a trigger meaning like you become activated, right? You want to like say something back, you want to yell, you want to do this, your body tenses, you get all like the physiological, mental, emotional reactions going on. So all of that is information And that's when I say to people, all right, bring that to me, right? Like, so when you're out there in the world, okay, let's bring that and let's unpack that and digest it because there's something in you that needs attention, needs sorting through or whatever, so that you move to that point where you have less of a reaction so that it is easier to keep
Hmm.
walking by.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know what else is interesting? I just found out just now that we were not connected on LinkedIn.
See, I felt like it wasn't working because it didn't make
But it's worked
the
all this whole
event.
time, hasn't it?
I don't know why it wasn't.
Because I mean, it's on. You're on LinkedIn right now on your. But I went to go check it out, and I'm like, how are we not connected? That's so
Oh,
weird.
so is it connected now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess they
Welcome,
missed all that gold that we just had.
welcome, Jordy. Oh, that's you can't see
Why
that at
can't
all,
I
can
see
you?
that well?
I have the text is like not the right color. It's not the
Yeah.
right color.
Oh, it's so much,
From
so much better.
where is that? Yeah, I know that Jordy lives in Macedonia, so maybe Skopje. How do you say that? I'm gonna have to ask
Mm.
Jordy to send me a pronouncer for that. Hi,
There you
Jordy.
go.
Jordy and I worked at Carnival Cruise Lines back in the Stone Age.
Ooh. That's
Um,
right.
so that's interesting. So basically, your advice to people in order to get to that point would be obviously to do the work, which you think is cool, which I think is cool too, but it's not easy, is to sit there and practice that mindfulness, practice that meditation, and that ability to watch it go by, which
Yeah.
it just blows my mind because I'm a very reactionary person. It's like every time something comes at me, it's like it's a bee. I'm like, it's just a hornet every time. And so and some people, I've seen this. Some people like, oh, it's a bee, and it lands on their shoulder, and they're like, hi,
Right.
bye, hi, bee, and the bee flies away. Um, and I try to do that when I'm with my kids, because when my
Mm.
kids, I remember when they were younger, and they would flip out when there was a bee, and they would like run around and like go crazy, and I'm like, it's just a bee, it's not going to hurt you. But
Mhm.
yet, if it were me by myself, I'd be like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you can't, yeah, you gotta, you know, it forces you to look, but that's exactly how your kids' behavior forces you to look at yourself, right?
oh yeah, oh boy, oh boy. The best part about switching gears a little bit, the best part about having like, so my kids are 21, 20, and 18 now. So they're kind of transitioning from being kids to being my children to being squatters.
Yeah.
Because it's time to move out. They're big enough to eat all my food, not just most of the food, and contribute in no way to anything else in the house. But that's that another episode.
Another subject, right?
Another
A
side
little
shoot.
tangential here. We're
Yeah,
getting all
yeah.
these new ideas for next episodes.
But looking like you said, your kids kind of give you that picture of yourself and how you think they see you and how you see yourself. I think I just made it way more confusing. But the idea that when you change yourself and how you're acting, you can like see yourself from their point of view, and that has been really an amazing thing for me to kind of go back and think of how I was, because I was a stay-at-home dad for quite a few years, back when they were all little, and I was not ready for that job. That is a huge job. Hats off to anyone, any stay-at-home parent that does that. That either works part-time or does gig work or whatever while you're taking care of the kids. And I had at one point, three of them in diapers and a puppy.
Mm.
Shit
Oh,
everywhere. But
gosh.
but that I'm looking back, I'm going, I'm remembering the times where I wasn't great, where I didn't let that negativity float on by, where I reacted to it and I was like, and I started to worry, like, oh my God, was my reaction to those events harmful to my kids? Did they learn bad traits from me in that respect? And as I get to know my kids as adults, I realized that they didn't. And most of the memories that they have from those times are positive. They're like, do you remember you took us to these? We drove an hour to get to this really cool playground, or we went here and we went there. It wasn't me blowing up at something that happened and yelling and screaming. And
good.
maybe they just blocked those out because it was so traumatic.
They're all repressed memories,
repressed memories,
and
so
they'll be coming out soon.
When they're in their 30s and they start coming to me and saying, "You screwed me up, Dad."
Exactly.
I don't think I was that bad, but I did. It all comes back to that, how I react to the negativity, to either a negative problem or, anything that's happening in my environment. And now in our overall environment that we're in, politically and just societally, that's common. And I think a lot of people are feeling that, and a lot of people are struggling with how to navigate all of that. And that's kind of like why we do this every week, is to just have a little chat about what people can do to try to navigate that and get through all that. So it all comes back to some of the same things that you talk about a lot, which is like this meditation and being mindful of your energy. And I joke around about this all the time about it being woo-woo stuff. But if you're watching this right now and you're rolling your eyes, I'm telling you, it's real. It's real stuff. What is there some kind of like, what books would you recommend, like outside reading, for people to kind of get a little bit more information and dive deeper into like the energy work and just thinking of that way of thinking?
Yeah. So the books that have had the most profound impact on me are more of the spiritual books. So I'm looking at piles of books that I have around the house. I love Tosha Silver, Tosha. I think she's amazing. I have her book Outrageous Openness, and I have some of her card decks. So she really helps to she's really good at helping, well, they all kind of do, to get the ego out of the way and allow it to learn how to allow and to move past that resistance. She's really great. I love Ram Dass. He's amazing. My favorite book of his is I think it's called Paths to God. I don't know where that book is right now. And I love I Am That. Nisargadatta Maharaj. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's amazing. Those are like little snippets. So the stuff that I like some of it might feel a little heavy or much for a lot of people. Um, but those are the ones that have found the most profound impact on
That
me.
the spiritual journey for all of us, I think, has been kind of lost, and also maybe even taken over or hijacked by religion in a way.
Yeah.
Because you can be highly religious and zero spiritual. I know
Yeah.
people that are highly religious they're just not spirit. When at least the spiritual type that I think of, spirituality being in touch with your humanness, in touch with your environment, and the ecosystem in which you live, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I guess you could call it God. I call it the universe. Some people call it Mother Earth or whatever, but that that spirituality, I think, is just so completely can be so completely different than religion. But if you look at a lot of the older religions, they go that like they're connected, but it like got lost somewhere. Do any of these books kind of talk about, because you said path to God, so there must be some sort of a connection there to religion, or is it not?
That one's based off the Hindu religious texts. So it's actually recommended that you read that first and then read Past to God. So that one's very much more specific. But
Yeah.
I resonate personally a lot with Ram Dass because he was a psychology professor. You know, he was in the field and then he did a lot of mushrooms and moves the needle in people's lives for sure. Love seeing this. Oh, thanks, Jason. Glad to have you here.
Did a lot of. I tell you what, maybe people should be doing more mushrooms. Maybe that's.
Well, yeah, I should talk about that too, but I don't want to get in trouble on the podcast.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that it does.
We offer no actual advice here.
No, this is you're right. Like, do we
This
need
is
to
for
put
entertainment
disclaimers?
purposes only.
But if you use it in a like spiritual ceremony or whatever, it helps like with that meditation piece that we were talking about earlier, where you become non reactive, or you react differently. You are less serious. Like you can think about how, so yeah, like earlier, Scott, like if you're talking about looking back on your past where you were like, why was I so reactive about that? Or like, why was I so upset about that? Or why did I get like so involved in that? And when you're on a psychedelic, you can look back at that and really see it from this whole different perspective of like, look, and I find it funny because then I do these things about like, oh, look at little human Stacey. She's just like bebopping her, like she's just getting thrown by her emotions here and there. And like you start to see those human reactions in your ego getting really caught up. And it's easier to separate that. So yes, meditation does that, but psychedelics also help make it a little easier for you to see that. Yeah.
I have some experience with some psychedelics back in the 20s, not in the 1920s, in my 20s. Just in case there was some confusion in that. You get your coffee coming out your nose now?
Right.
Or your herbal tea or whatever it is that you're drinking.
It's actually coffee. It's a mushroom coffee. Well, there's mushrooms in the coffee.
They're like chopped up mushrooms, like
they're
like Bella, like baby Bella mushrooms, like
no, they're ground mushroom. I order
the
them
mushroom
from
coffee.
It's the four sigmatic mushroom stuff. I order all different kinds. Which mushroom coffee cured a cough once, but that's a whole different story.
Really? It's another podcast. Just write these down.
Yeah.
You got episodes galore. I totally got sidetracked.
Sorry.
I had a good place I was gonna go to. No, I think I sidetracked myself. That's the problem.
Your 20s with your experience.
Oh, the psychedelics. I'm a big fan of definitely doing that with appropriate guidance, with a professional who's able to, figuratively hold your hand and the whole thing. Like you don't want to just be like, here, I'm gonna go drop acid and find myself. Like, just don't. But I know, and it's really cool to see that trend being more widely accepted in the mental health community and the medical community, that people are doing that. Because if you would have told me that was something, that was a thing in my 20s when my friends were doing mushrooms and stuff like that, it was kind of like, you'd be like, what? But it can be. I mean, if you think about like the Native Americans back, a lot of their spiritual, rituals had to do with like peyote and different kinds of plants
Right.
and things like that that help them to find their spirit, or a lot of, and that when you said looking at yourself like, oh, there's human Stacey just kind of bopping around and stuff, and that was an interesting kind of point, that I think if more people were able to separate themselves from their human self, and I guess that would be your ego, to be able
Yep.
to look at it, step outside and look at it and go, okay, you're totally, being this way because of your ego, and you have to let that go. I mean, can you
Right.
imagine how much better everybody's relationships would be if they could manage their ego and
Yeah.
recognize it and go, okay.
Yep. Right. Yeah, you can catch yourself sooner but I mean, but again, that's the work. And I essentially see my job is kind of helping people to get to that state without even having to do mushrooms to get there,
Yeah,
right? To be
right.
able to like catch that and be like, oh yeah, I'm caught in this habit loop. I'm caught in the state of mind, or and can you see it and you can catch it and choose a different path to not go down that road, because realizing that that's suffering, that's what suffering is. So suffering is back to resistance. Resistance is suffering, right? I think that's a Buddha's definition. Um, so when we are in resistance, we are suffering, and we are suffering because we are in resistance, and we are in resistance to what is, right? Like when you get upset, you're always like, this shouldn't be like this, right? You're always thinking about how it should be instead of how it
Yeah.
is. And so that's why acceptance, and we might heard the term radical acceptance, is first just accepting like, well, doesn't matter what should be or what's better or what I prefer, like this is it, right? So we need to get to the present moment of what is, and move forward from there. And yeah,
Well,
it's wild shifting.
that's that you can't see behind me, but I have the Serenity Prayer on the wall, which
Mm,
is a
nice.
big, big center part of my being these days. Even though I may not think of it on a daily basis, I may not recite it on a daily basis, but what you're just talking about to me is kind of goes back to what I think I touch on almost every one of these, is that I can't, there's a lot of things I can't control, but I can control how I react to those things.
Yeah.
And that part is huge.
Yeah.
Like, and when you're talking about resistance and people doing the work and all that, and the ego, a lot, I guess the first step, like every first step, is you have to understand, like you have to recognize that there's something there. And I
Right.
think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
have absolutely no clue that, you mean, what do you mean I'm this? Or what do you mean I'm that? And
Yeah.
that's hard. That's hard for people to take that first step and be like, let me look at this from another point of view to see, how are other people seeing me right now? How am I acting toward other people? Oh my
Right.
gosh. That's another rabbit
Yeah.
hole.
It really is. And I was in that too. I'm sure you were in that. We've all been in that. So that is helpful of when you see people in that, you recognize that they're in that state of suffering, but then you can easily look back and be like, well, I was there too. Like
Yeah.
we were all there. So, and then you also know that there's not a whole lot you can do because they'll poo-poo it just like how you did, right? Yeah, like you had to go on your journey. And it might
Yeah.
be you, not just you, Scott, but also
Yeah.
me, Stacey, and you as the collective.
Yeah.
Um, so then it's just kind of trusting in their path and their unfolding and allowing that. And I think the more we live in alignment with our truth and so forth, we serve as an inspiration. And one day you might say something or be a certain way or do whatever that might get somebody that's a little curious, like, oh, wait, you know what? Something might click, and then they'll start that journey from themselves.
Yeah. Wow. I like these conversations, and I will freely admit that it's one of those things where I'm like, you get this frantic message from me on Tuesday afternoon. What are we talking about tomorrow? Um, all of these things, they're all there in the back of my mind the whole week as I move through my day, as I see things. One of the things that you asked me the other day was, hey, maybe you should be more positive on your Facebook page. And it was a good wake up call, because that's for years my rule for Facebook has been ridiculous comedy, stupid videos, business stuff, or look what I'm doing, or look what the family's doing. And maybe not so much the family, because I don't necessarily like, depends. But anyway,
you have squatters now, so it's a little different.
Yeah. But in light of everything that's happening in the world, I start jumping on that, gotta share, gotta give my, put my 2 cents in. And the more I think about it, and you really kind of pushed me over the edge there, because the more I think about it, I'm like, it's not the platform. I mean, it could, for some people, it's the platform. For me, it's not the platform. Yeah. And it's something that I have, excuse me, that I have to work on. I need to stop doom scrolling, because my whole life is doom scrolling. Like, that's what I do. If I'm not working, I'm doom scrolling.
You're doom scrolling. Yeah,
and I just gotta stop. I gotta find something else to do. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It's just I try to think about, like, what would I have done in my 20s? I don't even know. I can't even think back when we didn't have a device.
Right.
It's like so ingrained. It's so ingrained in our life now that I can't even think about, like, what. I probably would have read a book.
Right, something a bit more productive. And we read a book. And then if you want to share about what you learned in the book, you're going to have a lot more cohesive sharing on social media, right? And it'll feel more centered, grounded, less reactionary, and
and that's
like
the thing. It's instead of, this kind of goes back to that attraction thing. Like, the more, if you keep thinking about all the bad things, you're just going to bring more of the bad things to you. So why share and comment all of the bad stuff that's going on? Just put out good. Just put out good messages, good things constantly. Like, that's what it should always be. Always good. Always good. So that's what, like, and I'm trying. I'm not going to be perfect, because who is, right? But I'm trying.
But you also want to be authentic too. You don't always have to be positive. I know we use that in our title here, but there's a difference between always being positive versus being reactionary.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
We should have called it, like, positively reactionary. I only react positively to everything. So what would you say? What would you say are three tips, three things that people can do to try to either combat resistance, work on resistance, change resistance? I don't know what the correct terminology would be, but three things that people can do to battle resistance.
That sounds like such an oxymoron.
I know, right? I know. Well, I can't. If you've got a better word, please.
Well,
navigate resistance.
Yeah, or just go to the opposite, which is allow. So I've probably shared this with you, maybe. I know people I have. One year I set a word for the year. Well, I set a word for the year lots of years, but one year it was allow, and that was huge for me. So I just used that word every day. Well, maybe not every day, but that was like my grounding word for the year. To move past resistance was to get into the energy of allow. So when I would notice, so basically, if you're having like any tension, if you're forcing, if you're attached to some sort of outcome, if you want things to be a certain way, whatever, if you're not peaceful, there's probably some sort of resistance going on. So moving to allow. So yeah, I would even recommend using just that word, allow. How does that word feel in your system? What reactions do you get in your body from that? Because you probably might feel resistance to the word allow, right? And then it'll show you all the places that you're holding on, and we hold on because of fear, right? So it's just going to help you become more self-aware as to like what's going on inside. And this is the work, right? Again, that we do to move forward. So yeah, you can always practice meditation, can be helpful. I tend to find it's most helpful at certain points in our journey. But obviously that's a thing. Um, and and yeah, maybe kind of looking at those past behaviors where you were in resistance and how it didn't serve you, and how, what would, if I were to have allowed in that situation, what would that maybe have looked like and that might help give you like evidence that allowing is safe. So we also struggle with that because it often feels unsafe to allow because we feel out of control. So it's a part of learning to let go. There's a lot of components here. So I don't know if I gave like, I know, I don't know if I gave like 3 things, but I'm sure people could take 3 things to follow that.
I tell you what though, oh, that's not right. I'm playing the wrong thing. Just screwing everything up here. There's the one. Yeah. So, well, that was very helpful. At least for me, I think just to do more of that thinking toward that, just to understand what resistance is and how it is affecting me and how to recognize it. I think that's kind of like the most important takeaway is how to recognize it and allow. That's, you said it's hard, and that is really hard to just be like, let the clouds go by. Let the clouds go by. Well, we just let 39 minutes go by, and we're going to do this again next week, and we'll figure out what we're going to talk about Tuesday afternoon, and it'll be fun. And hopefully, there's somebody that, we didn't have a lot of people joining in as we were doing this live, but maybe you're watching this after the fact, and you do have some points or some comments or anything, just leave some comments for us. Have any questions, or if there's anything that you want us to talk about, or that you'd like to learn more about, please do. Of course, Stacey Steinmiller, what is your website?
RadicalLifeCoach.com.
RadicalLifeCoach.com. And she is a radical life coach. I highly recommend Stacey. She's made a big difference in my life, and she can make a big difference in yours. And of course, if you want to do a podcast or any other kind of audiovisual, hit me up at rockfox.com. Powerfully positive once again. It's been a pleasure, and I will see you tomorrow, and we'll see you guys next week. Ciao.
Dancing in the limelight, out you're on in the night, looking fresh, looking tight.